Ahoy! There are a ton of new features on PTR and many of them weren't announced. They were never shown to us before and they were not teased in the patch notes, but they are on PTR. So some of them might not be intended for the next patch and might be coming to the game at a later date, but some of them will likely come with the next patch, and there are some very exciting ones that I want to show you. The first one is one that you may have already heard about because there's a lot of discussion around it at the moment, and that's the ultimate trophies. In the faction shop, you can find components for ultimate trophies. There's an ultimate combat trophy, an ultimate crafting trophy, and an ultimate gathering trophy. And each of these will combine all of your major trophies into a single ultimate trophy. This includes every trophy in the game except the luck trophy, which is not included in the gathering one. So you basically have to put up 3 ultimate trophies and your luck trophy if you want to have every potential boost in the game outside of the special event ones. Now the devs have very specifically said that this is a band-aid solution. This is not the long-term solution for the problem with trophy slots, but something that they can do quicker. And for a band-aid solution, it comes with a pretty hefty price tag of 95,000 tokens, which is more than you can currently earn, so you have to get to the new cap of tokens first. And you also pay 45,000 gold per component, meaning you need 9 of these materials, of these components in total, if you want to have all ultimate major trophies. In other words, the total price tag is 405,000 gold. I will give you my thoughts on the whole ultimate trophy system at the end of the video. Let's first talk about the other changes that are also coming that were also not announced. There are some changes to Gypsum Casts. Instead of having a daily cooldown like before, you now have a 7-day cooldown to make 7 casts. This is a great quality of life improvement that allows you to just do that all for 1 week and 1 day instead of having to log in and run to the gypsum kiln every day just to do that. There is, however, also a new version of the Gypsum Cast, which is the Legendary Cast. As the rarity would imply, these casts guarantee a legendary item. They cost 5 gypsum orbs instead of 1, and they have a 1000 umbral shard cost as well. You also have the standard 1 per day cooldown on these, not the new cooldown that the other gypsum orbs have. I wonder if the new gypsum orbs cooldown has something to do with the preparation for the expansion as well, or maybe how quickly you can level up the watermark for a new weapon. Speaking about new weapons, I have some info about the next weapon coming in the next days, so hit that button if you want to get notified about that. What I was hoping for with these legendary casts is that they may have a better chance to give you attributes that match whatever you want, but they did give us a change in that regard recently, but they kind of worded it a bit weirdly. They said they adjusted the attribute perks applied to Gypsum Cast gear to optimize them towards the item's preferred stat. But I don't know what exactly that applies for. So for example, the earring that I rolled still had intelligence and strength. On the other hand, the spear that I rolled had pure dex, so if every spear is guaranteed to be dex or strength, or maybe dex con, strength con, that would be a lot better, a lot more effective in terms of what you can get out of these. The significant downside is that it doesn't only cost you to craft these with umbral shards, you also don't get any umbral shards back. So from normal gypsum casts you still get some umbral shards, whereas from these ones you just lose. Which I guess is fine if you're consistently speedrunning mutations, because then you're just getting so many shards that you don't know what to do with them. But I think most players aren't necessarily in that situation. I know PvPers are often complaining about not getting enough shards especially, and people that have many gear sets or try to do different roles will also not have any shards. So this is kind of a bit niche and only for a few people, but it could be interesting with the expansion. Maybe this is a nice way to get some good legendary gear relatively quickly once you have reached the whatever expertise cap will be or however that will work. So could potentially be useful in some ways. Not that great at the moment, I think, unless you just have way too many umbral shards and gypsum orbs. Gathering will give you some extra rewards now in various ways. There are some new resources. I'm gonna use these ones here from logging as an example, but they exist for every gathering skill that you can get with, I don't know what chance, but with a chance while gathering. These new resources are buy now pickup and can be turned into research nodes for that gathering skill. So for example, with logging, you can get extra logging XP from this. And the resource that you get and the amount of XP is determined by which type of resource tier you are gathering. So for example, we have the abnormal resin here, which comes from wordwood trees specifically and gives us 8,600 XP. The unusual resin drops from ironwood trees and gives us around 36,000 logging XP. Now note something interesting here. The logging research nodes here for ironwood are blue. Normally, resources connected to tier 5 are purple. This makes me wonder if this is potentially a hint at a new gathering tier. To me, it would make a lot of sense if with the expansion we are getting some new resources if they're changing the gear tiers anyways, so we can craft higher tier gear of some form. We've also seen a little bit of the inside of the new zone. If you haven't seen that, check out my video from yesterday, I will link it right here. And there we can see very different kinds of trees. That doesn't have to mean anything, because for example, if you look at Reekwater, the trees there also look vastly different from other areas, and it's still just young trees and mature trees, so it could just be the same, but it could also be that these are the next tier of trees, or at least some of them are, and we will be getting different resources throughout the zone that we can't get at the moment that allows us to craft on a higher tier. I also stumbled across something else that is cool when it comes to gathering. I was collecting some flint and I picked up some Nightcrawler bait, as you do. They said they changed something about the way that some of the baits work. Specifically, the note said, change the effect for all bait. Baits now only affect rarity. So for example, the Nightcrawler bait gives us a medium boost chance of catching better fish in saltwater. But I also found a premium Nightcrawler bait. I guess these have a rarer chance to drop, and they give you a large boost of catching better fish and a medium boost of catching bigger fish in saltwater, but only during the day. I think that is a pretty cool feature, and I'm sure there will be plenty of other additions to fishing as well that we'll discover over time. I will talk about that more when I found more. But there's something else that is most certainly interesting for some of you, and that is Artisan Gear. Now this gear is weird. This gear requires relatively minimal amounts of cooldown mats to craft, is bind on pickup, and comes with a potential gear score of 600 to 600 locked. All of this gear is named, but it's 2 perkers except the shields. But hold on, don't click off the video yet. There are some very interesting other things that are connected to that. You have these purple weapons which come with a weapon perk as well as enchanted. They also look very cool. They are like see-through glass weapons essentially. So I wonder if they are just a placeholder. Because again, we may be getting new gear and maybe these ones will be craftable at the max gear score cap if you have the trade skill max. So you can get okay gear for the expansion very quickly once these come out. Maybe this is just some form of test version of that. Also, one of them in particular is very good, and that is the Artisan's Round Shield. This comes with 15 strength, keen, vicious, enchanted, which is an illegal perk combination, and will allow you to deal quite a lot of damage if you pair it with something like Primordial Edge, Scorpio, or a 2-perker sword with Rogue and Attunement. This also makes it an excellent PvE shield for expeditions where you can't get Bane. Now with outfitting you have your Artisan's Rings, which are nothing special, but you also have Artisan's Satchel, which is a 600 gear score bag that has lasting consumption and luck locked on it. This is definitely a very nice bag if you don't want to do the runestone stopwatch gamble. It does however also cost you 3 grand wound of holding, so it is more on the expensive end. And you can also see that the rest of the resource cost is significantly higher here as well. When it comes to cooking, one of the things that you unlock is Artisan's Flatbread, which just seems to be a hearty meal essentially, but that requires some more resources and is bind on pickup but lasts longer, as far as I can tell anyways. But the other one is pretty interesting, which is Artisan's Roasted Rabbit with seasoned vegetables. So this is just your normal roasted rabbit recipe, but it will last longer and it is bind on pickup, so you can only make these for yourself. I guess this is a bit of a way to make the older recipes compete with the newer brimstone ones if you are crafting them for yourself. In the workshop we also have Artisan Gathering Tools. These are relatively cheap compared to the bags, and aside of the unique cool look, they come with essentially best in slot perks for 600 gear score, but don't have the mode collection that you could get along with that if you crafted it yourself at 600 if it was legendary. So you have Gathering Alacrity, you have Yield, Luck, and Discipline is very useful if you are farming for aptitude caches. Again, like everything shown here, these may potentially not be in the next patch, and this is just some testing thing, and this is actually for the expansion where they wanted to have these perks locked on them and they wanted to set them up in the different crafting stations. But if they come out in this state, at least some of them will be useful for some of us. And now we're back to the very first point, the ultimate trophies. And there are a few things that I want you to keep in mind here. This is a temporary solution. The devs have said that. This is not the long-term solution for this problem, and this is important to note. And I wish that this solution would affect a bigger portion of the player base. I specifically think that a basic version of the combat trophies would help a lot of players in terms of the space that the trophies need, because a lot of players are simply not running major combat trophies because it's not necessary since they're not speedrunners. For the other trophies, basic versions make a little less sense because most people are running the major ones, but I think it would still be nice to have for newer players. What I specifically dislike, and it's honestly one of the very few things on this PTR that I dislike, is the price tag on these trophies. I think spending 405,000 gold for a band-aid solution that may not be viable for who knows how long, maybe just 3 months or something, maybe that's fully solved in the expansion, it just doesn't seem reasonable. I don't think I should spend that. I have a lot of gold, I would be willing to spend it on a permanent solution, but I don't want to spend it on something that may be useless after a very short amount of time. I know some people want to have these trophies to flex with them, like a goldfish in a porcelain bowl type of thing, but I don't care about that. I just want to have a better functionality for housing. I think it's annoying how it works at the moment, and I don't think this improvement to this annoyance should be gated behind a ton of gold and resources. I absolutely agree that the game needs gold sinks, but they shouldn't be basic functionalities being improved, and they also shouldn't be gated from much of the player base, because at this price point, many players will simply not be able to afford this. Not everyone is sitting at gold cap. Sure, some people are. Some people have been in rich companies for a long time. Some people play the trading post, but that's not the majority of the player base. For the majority of the player base, this is something they will not be able to use, and then they'll be sitting there and still have to swap their trophies like before. I'm very hopeful that they'll likely change the prices based on the pushback this is getting. I'm okay with the faction token price being high. I think faction tokens are something that just doesn't have enough purpose at the moment, so that's fine with me. But as for the gold price, I think that is just a bit too crazy. Again, a basic combat trophy I think would help a lot more people. But so far we have just talked about crafting and gathering changes, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there are also tons of functionality changes and other more hidden things that we still need to look at, as well as more information about the new weapon. So that's going to be happening in the next days. If you're interested in that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. If you want to get an early sneak peek at the things I'm talking about in the form of trading tips, then consider supporting me on Patreon. Thanks to my patrons who already do exactly that, and thank you for watching. SLOTH, out.